Top Iran leader runs away from Tehran as Russia betrays Iran in epic. Late April 2026. Collapse. In a jaw-dropping turn of events unfolding right before the eyes of a stunned world, Iran is literally falling apart at the seams. Even the highest-ranking officials inside the crumbling Islamic Republic are privately admitting what they once called unthinkable. Their regime is in a state of total collapse, teetering on the edge of oblivion. For decades, the mullahs who rule Tehran have pounded their chests and boasted to the entire planet that they would never, ever beg for help from any foreign power. They built their entire oppressive identity around the so-called resistance economy, a proud doctrine of self-reliance that claimed Iran could stand tall and defiant against the whole world if it had to. That narrative kept them in power despite crushing sanctions and despite the deep hatred their own people felt toward the regime. But those hollow boasts have now been exposed as nothing more than empty propaganda. This devastating war and the iron-fisted American naval blockade have ripped away the mask, revealing the regime's shocking weakness. Just yesterday in late April 2026, Iran's foreign minister fled Tehran in a humiliating rush to Russia, desperately begging Vladimir Putin for any lifeline he could get. The very same Putin who can barely protect his own refineries and energy infrastructure while stuck in his endless quagmire elsewhere. The irony is thick, bitter, and unmistakable. Iran, once strutting as a self-proclaimed regional powerhouse, reduced to crawling on its knees before a distracted and self-serving ally. Before we dive deeper into this desperate diplomatic scramble and the shocking betrayal that's unfolding, let's look at the bombshell statement President Trump released just this morning. Iran has officially informed the United States that they are in a state of complete collapse. They are pleading for the Strait of Hormuz to be opened immediately while they scramble to figure out their fractured leadership situation. Trump believes they might be able to stabilize their position, but given the chaos on the ground, many seasoned analysts are highly skeptical. This state of collapse Trump referenced is no exaggeration. It is directly tied to the catastrophic economic stranglehold imposed by the relentless U.S. blockade that is choking off Iran's economic lifeline in real time for more than 2 full weeks now since the blockade tightened its grip. In mid-April 2026, Iran has been completely unable to carry out normal trade. Exports have ground to a halt. Imports have vanished. Fresh satellite data paints a damning picture. Iranian ports are becoming dangerously overcrowded because loaded ships cannot leave Iranian waters. The blockade in the Gulf of Oman is ruthless and effective. Vessels can load cargo in Iranian harbors. They can even slip through the Strait of Hormuz, but they cannot proceed any farther into open international waters. As a result, the Gulf of Oman, especially in Iranian-controlled zones, is now littered with stranded tankers floating helplessly like ghost ships, while the regime's economy bleeds out. This blockade delivers a devastating double whammy to Iran's already fragile economy. On one side, there is zero revenue flowing in because the regime depended almost entirely on oil and petrochemical exports to stay afloat. On the other side, critical imports, including food staples that feed millions of ordinary Iranians, have been cut off entirely. Grocery shelves are emptying fast, medicine supplies are dwindling, and inflation is exploding at a rate that has Iranian families terrified for their next meal. The squeeze is coming from both directions at once, and regime officials are truly scared out of their minds. They know the clock is ticking. Take a hard look at the latest intelligence reports coming out of Tehran. Iranian officials are now in full panic mode over the very real possibility that massive protests could reignite at any moment, just like the explosive unrest that rocked the country back in January 2026. Yesterday, Iran's Supreme National Security Council held an emergency closed-door session specifically to address growing fears among security forces about a fresh wave of demonstrations. Internal assessments and intelligence briefings warned that economic hardships, skyrocketing prices, mass unemployment, and the near-total destruction of key petrochemical and steel industries could spark renewed street explosions within days or even hours. Estimates shared inside that meeting painted a grim picture. Iran's economy might not survive more than 6 to 8 weeks of this unrelenting U.S. naval blockade. Keep in mind those numbers come from the regime's own optimistic viewpoint, so the reality on the ground is likely far worse. On top of the naval stranglehold, there is another crippling blow: the near-total shutdown of Iranian internet access that has lasted for more than 2 months now. We have passed the 60-day mark, and 99.9% of Iranians, over 90 million people, remain completely cut off from the outside world and from each other. Regime security officials admit this digital blackout has left roughly 20% of the workforce, especially those in online or tech-related jobs, essentially unemployed. That translates into an additional 2 million private sector workers potentially losing their livelihoods. The regime deliberately keeps the internet dark because they know what happens when Iranians connect with the world and with one another. Protests erupt, and the mullahs come dangerously close to losing control, just like they nearly did in January. The security agencies inside Iran have now concluded that fresh public protests are not a question of if, but only when. The only uncertainty is the exact timing tomorrow, next week, or in the coming months. That unpredictability is exactly what has regime officials sweating bullets. They are willing to sacrifice the entire economy, sacrifice food supplies, sacrifice everything if it means clinging to power for a few more weeks. They came within days of losing everything earlier this year, and they will do anything to avoid a repeat. Right after sending a desperate proposal to the United States offering to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, in exchange for lifting the blockade, the Iranian foreign minister bolted for Russia. From the American perspective, that proposal made 0 sense. This entire conflict erupted because of Iran's reckless nuclear ambitions, and there will be no negotiations until Tehran addresses that core issue head-on. The United States has 0 interest in throwing the regime a lifeline while it continues its dangerous behavior. Iran knows this, which is why they immediately turned to Moscow for help, only to be met with what many are calling a stunning betrayal. Let's talk about that Russia-Iran meeting in chilling detail. Russian state media released footage of the Iranian foreign minister landing in St. Petersburg, looking visibly strained as he was whisked into talks with Putin. The two sides held a tense, 2-hour closed-door session joined by Russia's top security services chief. Before the meeting even began, Iranian diplomats felt the need to publicly clarify that they were not coming to Russia to ask for charity. That preemptive denial speaks volumes. In reality, everyone watching knows they were there to beg. Iran had poured tremendous resources into helping Russia earlier in the Ukraine conflict, supplying waves of Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, and even sending Iranian engineers to help build production factories inside Russian territory. Yet when Iran's own survival is on the line, Russia has failed to deliver meaningful support. Putin is simply too preoccupied with his own wars to pull Iran's chestnuts out of the fire. This is the betrayal that stings the most. Russian satellites did provide some limited targeting data during earlier phases of the fighting, allowing Iran to score a few minor hits on U.S. bases or civilian infrastructure. But that assistance was token at best. Iran's once-feared military has been exposed as a paper tiger in the recent clashes. Let's recount the humiliating details of the battles that brought us here, because the numbers are devastating. In the explosive mid-April 2026 confrontations, especially the intense battle of the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian forces launched hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles in coordinated waves aimed at U.S. naval assets and allied shipping lanes. The regime bragged in advance that they would turn the Gulf into a sea of fire. Instead, advanced U.S. and coalition air defense systems intercepted over 92% of the incoming projectiles with clinical precision. Iranian fast attack boats and frigates tried to swarm commercial tankers and U.S. destroyers in hit-and-run raids, but they were systematically picked off. Satellite imagery and after-action reports confirm at least 15 Iranian naval vessels were sunk or heavily damaged within the first 48 hours alone, including several Russian-supplied corvettes that proved woefully outdated against American electronic warfare and precision-guided munitions. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' IRGC Navy, once touted as unstoppable in asymmetric warfare, lost nearly 80% of its operational surface fleet in under 2 weeks. Their much-hyped missile inventory has been cut in half. Their drone factories lie in ruins from retaliatory strikes, and their air force, already aging and poorly maintained, could barely get off the ground before being neutralized. Reports from the battlefield describe scenes of utter disorganization. IRGC commanders issuing contradictory orders, low troop morale, leading to desertions and equipment failures that left entire units stranded without fuel or ammunition. One leaked assessment from Western intelligence even suggested that several senior IRGC officers were captured or killed in failed boarding operations against civilian vessels. These were not heroic stands. They were desperate, chaotic acts of a military that had overreached and paid the price. Iran's hateful strategy of attacking not just enemies, but even supposed allies, firing on Qatari and Omani, shipping targeting civilian tankers in international waters, only isolated them further and turned global opinion decisively against the regime. They burned bridges with partners they once called friends because they saw the conflict as an existential threat to their own survival. That level of ruthless self-interest is exactly why no one trusts them with nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, the oil storage crisis is reaching a breaking point. Independent analysis from Kepler, a respected global research firm that advises major energy companies, estimates Iran has only 12 to 22 days of usable storage left before they run out of options. Iran is not transparent about exact figures, but based on pre-war data and current satellite monitoring, the outlook is bleak. Not a single tanker has successfully evaded the U.S. blockade in the Gulf of Oman region. Ships load up, cross the strait, and then sit idle, unable to reach paying customers. The blockade is targeted specifically at vessels entering or leaving Iranian ports, regardless of flag. And the line sits at the edge of the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. This precision has rendered Iranian bluster about breaking the siege completely toothless. Satellite images released in the last 48 hours show dozens of white dots, stranded tankers clogging the waters. Crews are running low on supplies, tempers are flaring, and the economic damage is mounting by the hour. Sources close to mediators in Pakistan say Iran is preparing yet another revised peace proposal after the first one was swiftly rejected by Washington. The process is fluid and messy, complicated by slow and difficult communication with Iran's top leadership. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in his first major interview since the ceasefire began, laid out the cold realities holding back any deal. When asked about the main roadblocks, Rubio pointed directly to the radical Shia clerics running the country and the deep internal fractures that have only grown worse under pressure. He described the leadership as split between pragmatic hardliners who understand they must run an actual economy and theological hardliners, led by the supreme leader and his inner circle, who are obsessed with exporting revolution at any cost. Rubio expressed uncertainty about the new supreme leader's true status and authority, noting that he has not appeared publicly and that questions swirl about whether he is truly in charge or merely a figurehead. Putin himself hinted during the St. Petersburg meeting that he had received a written message from the supreme leader wishing him well. But the wording left many wondering if the leader is even alive or capable of making decisions. The regime's opacity only fuels more speculation and weakens their negotiating position. Rubio also made clear that Iran's nuclear program remains the central issue. Delaying talks on that front is unacceptable, because a nuclear-armed Iran would be an existential threat, not just to the region but to global stability. The regime has already shown its willingness to hold 20 to 25% of the world's energy supplies hostage through the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine that same regime, armed with nuclear weapons, they would hold entire nations ransom. Their support for Hezbollah, Hamas, and Shia militias across Iraq and beyond proves they seek domination, not coexistence. The recent terrorism rampage, targeting civilian shipping and attacking supposed allies, reveals a regime that would rather burn the region to the ground than lose power. Do you see how dangerous this situation has become? What do you think? Should the United States hold firm on the nuclear issue? Or is there room for some limited compromise to prevent further chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. We read every single one and the debate is heating up. Iranian officials claim they are serious about striking a deal to escape the mess they created, but their track record of deceit and aggression makes trust almost impossible. All the problems that plagued Iran before the latest conflict, economic riots, corruption, youth unemployment, are still there, only magnified. Their missile stockpiles are halved, their factories are rubble, and their navy is a shadow of its former self. Without a credible agreement, the pressure from extraordinary sanctions and military vigilance will only intensify. To truly understand why Iran behaves with such reckless hatred and desperation, we must look beyond 1979 to the deeper historical patterns of misrule that still haunt the country today. But one thing is crystal clear: in late April 2026, the regime's days of bluffing and bullying are numbered. The military they once paraded as invincible has been humbled in open battle. Their economy is gasping for air. Their allies are pulling away, and their own people are one spark away from rising up again. What do you believe will happen next? Will the Iranian regime finally crack under the weight of its own failures? Or will some last-minute miracle from Moscow change the game? Do you think Russia's betrayal will be the final nail in the coffin? Share your honest predictions and opinions below. We want to hear from you. The world is watching, and your voice matters in this unfolding drama. Stay tuned, because developments are moving fast, and the next 48 hours could decide everything. The fall of the Islamic Republic may not be a question of if anymore, it may only be a question of when.